session of the day for Women Crush Wednesday. And let me tell you, the ladies of today and Janisha have killed it. Okay, it has been an amazing day, full of inspiration, full of anything that will make you go out and do something greater, be better humans. That's what you got today. This last session, I'm really excited about. We have three amazing women that are here to talk to us about storytellers, making storytelling, telling stories that matter. We are excited to have Kelli Richardson Lawson, Richardson Lawson, I got that right, yes, Sheereen Russell, and Crystal McCrary. Laura is going to moderate this session of these amazing women, and I'm sure we will all be inspired to pick up a pen, get on our computers, and just write, full of joy and excitement and love. So I'm going to turn it over to Laura, and we will see you guys back in an hour. Enjoy.
Thanks, Adrienne.
Well, ladies, it is an absolute pleasure to be with you on Women Crush Wednesday at Inkwell Beach Live and closing out an amazing day of programming, as Adrienne said. And I always have to get this started by having you all introduce yourselves. So I'm going to go in left to right because I'm left-handed. And if Kelli can give us an introduction about who you are and what you do.
Sure, I'm Kelli Richardson Lawson. I'm founder and CEO of Joy Collective and founder of the Sunrise Project.
Awesome. And Sheereen?
Sheereen Russell, and I am at the wonderful, awesome network of OWN, the Oprah Winfrey Network, and responsible for all of our partnerships and alliances and brand narratives and storytelling around inclusion audiences, primarily Black women.
Wonderful. Welcome. And Crystal?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. I have a production company, Crystal McCrary Productions. I know that's really original, named after myself. And a big part of my life's work as a creative, particularly in the last 5 to 10 years, has really been centered around creating content that profiles women of color who've impacted the world socially, culturally, politically, artistically. And that has continued and expanded into doing documentaries around social justice, primarily through a number of documentaries that I've done over the last few years on the Legal Defense Fund, which is headed by one of my personal heroes, Sherilyn Eiffel, who is on the front lines of civil rights legal architects.
Awesome. Well, it's an honor to have you wonderful ladies here. So I think the first thing, let's get this sort of elephant out of the room. So we're in July 2020, and how this world was reacting on May 1st, 2020 is a lot different than how this world reacts today. How has the last 6-8 weeks on top of the pandemic affected your businesses? And I'll get started with Sheereen.
So that's a great question. The way it's impacted our business has been tremendous in a lot of ways. OWN is a JV as part of Discovery, and Discovery is home to 18 networks, Food Network, TLC, HGTV, just to name a few. And so there's been an immediate response in the marketplace by way of advertisers and partners wanting to determine quickly what they could do to address the concerns of Black audiences and consumers, but also how to address them properly with the right cultural nuances, the specifics as it relates to sensitivities, and just being tonally in the right space and to show up. And so in addition to that, being at OWN and with the amazing CEO and leader, Oprah Winfrey at the helm, it was paramount for our team under her leadership to figure out how could we serve the audience with information, how could we serve the audience with inspiration, how could we empower them, and then also how could we bestow healing. And so there was a spotlight, which was essentially a town hall that ran across all of our 19 networks. And it was Oprah with 10 different panelists, everyone from Ava DuVernay to Rashad of Color of Change, in addition to, just a slew of great individuals. And I apologize that I'm not reciting them all, but this conversation aired on 19 networks and across all of our platforms. And it was a powerful 2-night dialogue about what does allyship look like? What do Black people need right now? What are our asks? What should we be doing at the polls? And more importantly, what does this all mean and how did we get here? And there were some really meaningful and powerful conversations that came from that. And then in addition to that, it also meant having a conversation around Father's Day and Black men and fatherhood. And what does that look like? And what conversations are Black men having to have with their children right now? How do they move differently because of this climate? And what does that mean? So those were 2 immediate ways that we showed up from a programming perspective. And then the other place that I would tell you that it's different or how we've been impacted, Laura, is that when it comes to our rich storytelling with Queen Sugar, with Greenleaf, with all the stuff that Tyler also does for us and has done, it became the response of those showrunners and those storytellers to figure out how do we now reimagine our stories. And we have to be thoughtful and mindful in this climate that our core audience of Black women are dealing with 2 pandemics. And how do we make sure that our stories are going to service her, nurture her, and heal her, much of what all of our programming is intended to do on own. So that's a heavy responsibility, but it's required because right now what we need to see is that accountability when it comes to programming to make sure that we are showing up properly for our audiences. And in addition to that, providing levity where we can, because it has been heavy. And our audiences have also said to us, we need a space to just let down, and we need a space to be calm. We need a space to laugh. We also need a space to, on top of the healing work and inspiration, just be reminded of our brilliance and the art and what we do. And so we have a rich roster of films that are coming up right now just to, again, celebrate, our talents, our arts, and our people. So that's how we're responding and how we've been impacted.
Awesome. Amazing. And it's been great to see. And for Crystal, how about you? Since, you're obviously independent and you can shot call yourself, how has it affected you and the business?
Wow. So, while I have been independent, having my own production company, a few things have remained constant in this moment, and that is the alliances that I have on content that I create. What's front and center for Crystal McCrary Media really is social justice, criminal justice reform, and women empowerment. And so those 3 umbrellas are always front and center in what I do. And I'm, fortunate that I have had some projects as an, independent production company that have been ongoing throughout this pandemic and just throughout the state that we are in the nation on multiple social, political stratas. And what it's done, particularly along the lines of my work around criminal justice reform, police reform, and just social justice in general, it's really amplified the need for storytelling in that space. And so I've done 4 short documentaries on the Legal Defense Fund, which I'm sure you all know. I'm not sure if the people who are tuning in know that the Legal Defense Fund, their place in American history and their place in this moment in America, that LDF essentially, they are the civil rights legal architects. They were, founded by Thurgood Marshall. They were the lawyers that represented the clients in the Smith v. Allwright case. This is a 1944 case that ended all white primaries in Texas, which essentially allowed Black folks to vote in America. Thurgood Marshall would have said when he was alive that his most important case was not necessarily Brown v. Board, which ended, state-sanctioned segregation in America, but his most important case was Smith v. Allwright. So, moving forward, telling the story and amplifying the work of the civil rights legal activists who are on the front lines in this moment that we're living in, when we have a nation that is nominating, well, it's not a nation, but it's an administration that's nominating Supreme Court and just justices, federal Supreme Court and local, on the local level, on the circuit level, justices who have refused to acknowledge during their Senate confirmation hearings that Brown v. Board was correctly decided. We're just in a really perilous state. And so for me as a content creator, it's intertwined with what's important to Black folks, being able to not have all of our civil rights gains of the last 65 years be completely rolled back. And a huge part of that starts with, let's make sure that the courts, that the judges that are in place are still judges that understand that a landmark Black letter law, unanimous Supreme Court decision case like Brown v. Board that got rid of segregation in this country is still the law of the land. And so I've just really been focused on that creatively. I mean, I have other projects that I'm still working on, but in this moment, and I'd like to think that it's more than a moment, that it's a movement, that it is a moment of reckoning for all of us around, economic disparity, around educational disparity, that we are really around criminal justice disparity, that we collectively as Black women and as a nation are really coming together and saying, enough, this is our time. I mean, I think about Zora Neale Hurston's quote in Their Eyes Were Watching God, Black women have been the mules of the world. Well, no more. And that is really what my work is motivated by, making sure that we have a voice and making sure that the interest of our families and our people are represented.
Awesome. And so necessary. It's like at this point, if we don't do it, no one else is going to. And so,
Right.
and also, we all know this. If you want something done, ask a Black woman to do it.
Hello.
I will give you a very simple example. You are all sitting here at a conference that has 100 speakers that was put together in 2 weeks by Black women. So
Absolutely.
And it's our collective power that enables us to do this all. And last but not least, Kelli, tell us how you have navigated the last few weeks and months here in the U.S.
Yeah, so for Joy Collective, first of all, we're a Black-owned, women-owned firm based in the D.C. area. And what we have done really in the last few weeks, really since May 25th, our business has really blossomed. It's been very strong. We were rated as the top 6 out of 100 fastest growing agencies in 2019, which is a blessing in and of itself. And since the murder of George Floyd, we have been focused on 3 things. One is around the D&I space, really helping companies, huge companies, understand that this is real. The trauma is real, the pain is real, and they need to acknowledge it first and help their Black employees work through it, number one. Number 2, they need to understand what systemic racism in America looks like, what it feels like, and how we are still living in a racist society. We've only been free for 14% of the time we've been here out of the 401 years that we've been in this country. And so understanding why this is such a palpable situation right now. The pain runs so deep. And so helping organizations and helping companies understand what systemic racism in America looks like and why this George Floyd incident was the tipping point, quite frankly, because we've finally said enough is enough. And so we have been doing a tremendous amount of healing circles with big, huge Fortune 100 companies for the Black employees. We do private safe spaces with psychologists to help the Black employees work through their pain. We then follow that up with cultural immersions with hundreds and hundreds of employees at huge majority owned companies. We've done a lot of those and are continuing to do those. So that's one big area. And we wrote a white paper around, how companies should respond. What should the correspondence look like? What should the communications look like? How do you acknowledge the trauma? Acknowledge that this is not business as usual. So that's one big bucket. And that has been a tremendous growth space for us because we are a culturally sensitive, culturally focused firm. Yes, we do advertising. Yes, we do events and grassroots, all that good stuff. But we're grounded in cultural insights. And so at the end of the day, when it comes to understanding Black America or Black women or Black anything, we have an amazing team of insights people. That's one big space of work. Number two, similar to Crystal, we do a bunch of content production and storytelling. So we have the ability to do that with an agile sense. And so for the Oprah Winfrey, the OWN Town Hall special, we produced a spot in, 2 days or something like that and delivered it to OWN. Same thing with the BET Awards, same thing with Juneteenth. We've done a bunch of content with a very specific focus on taking action and driving legislative advocacy. And so really leaning into this notion that legislation is what changes lives. And how do we really, yes, all the protesting is critical, the Blackout Tuesdays and all the social posts are critical. But at the end of the day, it's the legislation that's going to make a difference. And so that's the third thing that we've really been focused on is amplifying the work that we're doing around the Crown Act, which has been known as creating a respectful and open world for natural hair. Over the last several weeks, we've expanded that to be creating a respectful and open world with no racism. So there's 4 strategic pillars within that work as well. So I'll pause there, but we've been really blessed and very fortunate, and I don't take that lightly. I know it could be worse, and there's millions of people out there that are not working right now. So I'm feeling very much in a space of gratitude as we're trying to help people, navigate this world and how we can really make impact and change around the areas that Crystal talked about and others.
So in essence, not busy at all, Kelli. Just
a little bit.
Just chilling. You're in Naples.
It's
all good. It's all.
Yeah, I did run away from home, but it's all good. I'm working by myself in Florida without my teenagers, so it makes it a little different.
Oh, you got a break from your teenagers?
I got a break, girl. I ran away with my husband's blessing because I think I was about to kill him and my kids. He's like, why don't you just go down there? I was like, yes, I'm on the flight tomorrow.
You can escape. And, I think that, that kind of goes into like my next thought around this, where it's like, we're at this time, like we have to sort of craft our own narratives, but also we're all hearing from brands. You're like, what do I do? Do I put a black square up? Do I make a donation to NAACP, LDF? Like, what do I do? And I'd love to sort of touch a little on about how to sort of meet brands where they are to help them get to where they need to be. So it'd be great for you, from a brand side, Sheereen, how you're working with brands to essentially get them to that next place.
Sure. And, Kelli and the Joy Collective team are great partners at OWN, and we work across a myriad of partners and brands like a Unilever and the Crown Act and Dove. And, for the 100 Black Fathers conversation that we hosted, Unilever showed up with this beautiful creative, but also demonstrating we see you Black men and we see your struggle and we see your pain and we're here for you. And to me, that's the beginning piece. It's acknowledgement. You must see the audience. You must say that we see you. And a lot of that requires data insights, but real conversation and listening more than assuming. I think what's been most illuminating for us is that to Kelli's point, we've done some work with our teams internally at Discovery and OWN, and just really sitting in the space of that pain and allowing everyone to hear and see in those healing circles what that pain really feels like. I'll tell you a personal anecdote that I was speaking to our entire sales force of like 400 people and explaining that we were about to do this massive takeover, which I was thrilled about. And I got overwhelmed and just started bawling, and I didn't even know the source of it, but it was like I couldn't even get the words out. And I'm looking at all these faces, looking back at me on the camera, reacting to just what was just a very primal pain and that wound that felt like there's no way to close this right now. And it's just so important that I feel it and that I acknowledge it. And I am a mother of 2 sons, 8 and 5. I am married to a Black man. And all of a sudden, I just felt threatened, at risk, and scared and terrified, and a myriad of feelings. So I say that all to say, part of the work means bringing your full self to the table and bringing in the emotion, bringing in the rawness, bringing in the vulnerability in order to be brave to say what needs to be said. And what I'm telling marketers are to be on the right side of this is to tell the truth. It is to say to the audience and the consumer, I see you. We celebrate and recognize and honor who you are, but also the challenges and the struggles that are before you. And who are you as a brand going to be? Because it's not enough just to say that. How are you showing up with resources? Where are you going into community? Where are you going to put dollars against from an activation perspective? And then also, how does your creative look different now going forward? Are you looking, when you put Black people in the content, do they fit one particular portrayal? Or are there multiple portrayals coming through with different hues, different sizes, different socioeconomic reference points by way of the stories that you're telling about your brands, and making sure that we don't show up as a monolith. And then again, asking the people to be a part of the conversation within your organization. There's so much Indigenous insight that exists right at the organizations, and to not tap into that, to not listen for audience feedback as well as, is this right, is this wrong, is a misstep. And one of the brilliant things we did with the partners at Procter & Gamble were they sent us this really amazing and impactful 60-second unit, which was a call to action to white people and saying, how are you going to use your power? How are you going to show up in this moment? Because to be silent is to just, white silence is violence. Right. If you're not going to show up, then you are not participating in the healing work. And this beautiful spot, and our team reviewed it. Ms. Winfrey looked at it. And I say that all to say is that we locked hands with P&G, we locked hands with Unilever, McDonald's, and we said, we are coming in this partnership with you. You can't have an opportunity to have an infraction because it's representative of all of us in this conversation. So I just simply say that there's so much vetting, there's so many conversations that have to be had, and there's so many eyes that need to look at things, but it really has to start from the very raw space of the real sheer emotion that exists and leaning into that without abandon or without a fear rather of abandoning total market audiences. Like we want specificity, we want nuance, we want truth, and we want you to be absolute and unapologetic about it in all of the stories that you tell.
And it's true. We gotta meet them where they are, but you gotta be in it for real and not just, I kind of want to do this, but I'm not sure. It's because at the end of the day, this all comes. We have to sort of do this together to rise all the boats. Otherwise, this moment where we can actually turn into a real movement will crash yet again. And Kelli, I'm guessing for you, since super busy because brands are coming to you, how have you sort of been able to sort of obviously quickly rally to this moment to provide the services, but also like figure out what to say yes to, but obviously also what to say no to, because I'm sure you're getting all kinds of requests these days.
That is a really good question. And I think, at the end of the day, it boils down to brands that are really grounded and rooted in purpose. For us, it's really clear. Joy is my middle name in the honor of my dad. At the end of the day, it's all about, for Joy, our mission is to create joy for ourselves, our families, our communities. And I say that really clearly, our communities and the world. And so ultimately, if a brand is not aligned with that vision and really meaningfully wanting to impact communities, it doesn't really work with us. And so there's certain companies we just won't work with. We won't work with tobacco companies. We won't work with other types of companies. But there's also companies that just really want to leverage us for our relationships. We have amazing relationships. And it may not make sense right now. Like, we're not trying to, pimp out our people, basically, for lack of a better phrase. And so at the end of the day, we're working with companies that feel like OWN and others that feel really rooted in purpose, that really want to make a meaningful impact, and that are not just talking about it. So, the woman that runs the helm at Unilever, a Black woman that I met 30 plus years ago at P&G, we started our careers at P&G. She's now at Unilever. And she really walks the talk. You know, she's been in this space for a very long time. So we work our behinds off for her, you know, because at the end of the day, she's at the top giving a Black agency a chance, number one. Number two, really meaning what she says coming out of her mouth, because she has been that way since day one, since I met her, coming in from Dartmouth 30 plus years ago. And so we work our asses off on the Crown Act to make sure that we are going to make impact. And finally, we want to do work that makes an impact, that really is going to help our people. So being able to end hair discrimination, so my beautiful boys that might have dreads one day won't get sent home from school, is important, meaningful work, and it makes me happy and proud that we work like last week. I don't think it was team all night, every day, the whole Joy team. And so, but we pulled off the Crown Act Day and the celebration, and it felt tremendously exciting and powerful. We were all crying. It was tears of joy because it's like we did that in 3 days. You know what I'm saying? So we just, you know, rallied together for people that really mean it. And you can tell there are companies that don't mean it, and we won't work with them. It has to be real. And also I believe Black women, we know it in our gut if people mean right. If they do right, they mean right, they speak right, all of it. If it's not right, we will run the other way. And then Sheereen says it all the time. It's an underground sisterhood. She talks about it all the time. So if Sheereen texts me and says, hey, my sister over at such and such company is going to reach out to you, I trust Sheereen. So I'll say, okay. And I go on that based on a relationship with someone that I trust.
Right.
And so I think a lot of our businesses come from, you know, pure just, you know, relationships and people that say, you know, these are good people over here, then we'll say, okay, we'll work with them. So that's how, I don't know that that's a science at all, but it's really mostly like a feeling, you know? Mm-hmm.
Well, it's true. I think there's an art and a science to it, because the kind of clients who want to do that work will also be attracted to you. It's the same deal about the energy you put out is the energy you get back. And those kinds of clients who are like, I'm in it for real, I'm not phoning it in, are going to be attracted to people who do phenomenal work like yourself. And also for you, again, since you're on the other side of the universe, but still a deeply important part of this conversation, how are you sort of now leveraging the things that you've done in the past to sort of move forward and also make a real lasting impact through the work that you're doing today? Crystal?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were still talking to Kelli. I was so caught up in the authenticity of no. I'm sorry. I didn't know that was directed to me. But so let me just say, because I just want to pick up on that about the beauty of authenticity and the beauty of the sisterhood on this. It's so interesting that you were talking about the Crown Act and that whole movement. A big part, interestingly enough, in this moment, in this movement of the work that I have documented in film and content with LDF, many of the contemporary cases that LDF is doing have to do with hair discrimination cases around young Black girls in school, young Black boys in school. And that is yet another way that we have been society has attempted to diminish us, that has attempted to make us, to otherize us. And so it warms my heart. It lifts my spirit to understand and to recognize that in a more global way, that we are all coming together on the legal side, on the marketing side, on the cultural side, on the creative side. I mean, you think about Matthew Cherry, he just won the Oscar, right? Yeah. All of this, it's such a beautiful moment that we are in this space of reckoning. And we are not going to be otherized, and we are not going to be diminished. I mean, just think about that. I was looking at something, and the fact that Black women and Black men, that we are discriminated against in the workplace because of how our hair naturally grows out of our heads.
Our head, exactly.
That's just unacceptable in
absolutely.
And so the fact that you all, I'm sorry. Sorry, my phone was. I'm like several, but in any event, so I'm just encouraged and inspired that we are in a place where all of our authenticity and intention are coming together to collectively say that we're not taking it anymore. We're just not. And if you do try to discriminate because of our hair, if you do try to discriminate because of anything that has to do with who we are as people of Black folks, that's not going to be tolerated.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so, and again, that is a part of the work that I am amplifying as a content creator.
What's funny,
we should definitely talk. I'm sorry to cut you off, but we should definitely talk about that.
Yeah, I would love to.
Look at that, making connections right here on screen.
Just on that note, I mean, like LDF, they represented the young man with the dreads who was not able to go to his graduation. Remember the wrestler who they asked? They were like, "You have to."
Andrew Johnson. Yes.
I mean, this is a real issue that it's. You think about just in the canons of law, and you think about disparate impact. And so much that happens in our society, it's very clever, right? Like the point regarding how Black folks are discriminated in the workplace for how we choose to wear our hair, there's a correlation with that in workplaces saying, oh, well, we're not actually discriminating against you. It's just that we have a uniform policy. But no, that uniform policy is that may not be your intention, but the effect is that it is discriminating against a class of people that happens to be Black, right?
Absolutely.
Same thing. And so you can go across with voter suppression. And so it's the same sort of logic of people that are or states or cities that suppress votes. They're like, well, why don't you all have ID to vote? And you have secretaries of state in places like Georgia, in places like Texas, in places like Mississippi and Alabama that say, well, this isn't voter suppression that we're asking these 85-year-old Black women to have driver's license because the 2013 Supreme Court case, Shelby case, that essentially gutted the Voting Rights Act. Well, actually, it is, because you have many elderly Black women or many elderly, just poor folks in the South that were born on farms and never had a birth certificate, but have been voting for years and never had driver's license or state IDs. But all of a sudden, you have to show a driver's license to vote in the state of Texas, but you can't use a student ID, but you can use a gun permit to vote in the state of Texas. So it's us coming together and understanding that there is covert situations that are occurring that contribute to discrimination against us collectively, whether it's our hair, whether it's for our zip codes, whether it's gerrymandering or redistricting. We have to continue to come together and as a collective recognize that we will not be, we're not going to be denied in this moment. And it is the power, I believe from the core of my being, that is the power of Black women to come together and make sure that we are taken care of.
You know, Crystal, when you say that, it makes me think of the power of story, because as you illuminate all that insight, I see my grandmother in the South, or I see said person born on the farm without the birth certificate. And it further demonstrates how we as storytellers or partners to storytellers really need to share more of these stories, because the truth of the matter is, part of the reason I believe that the entire collective, sigh we all heard when we watched George Floyd's murder is it was a story playing out over 8 minutes of his life does not matter to me. I can do this. This is what I'm going to do. And so we watched that. And for all the trauma it induced and all the pain, it also created for empathy. It also created for action and activism. It also created for the unrest that is now part of the, the cultural and social experiences that we're having. And I think it's upon us to continue to show more stories. And when you have that intentionality of saying, this woman's vote matters, this woman's story matters, her contributions to this collective matters. And so my hope and my affirmation and prayer is that more beautiful stories will unfold. And I say this in many rooms, as a mother to Black children who do not see themselves in animation, who do not see themselves in many films.
That's right.
I recognize that they have to wait till they become adults to see their selves normalized. But more importantly, even in the homes of white Americans or white people, if you're not seeing Black children with hopes and dreams or Black families in your content, what it ultimately says is these lives don't matter in fiction, in story, and thus they don't in real life. And so that's another place where story must change, and there must be effort to help Black and white children see Black lives in the storytelling that they're familiar with.
Sheereen, I just have to say, when you said that with the storytelling, I think about Miss Winfrey, Ava DuVernay, in Selma, and you think about her coming and trying to vote.
Yes.
Literacy test. And it was, and she came, remember in Selma when she came up there and Miss Winfrey, she played that role, but tragically it's happening right now. Again. Mm-hmm. So it's like these modern day poll taxes that essentially we just saw in Kentucky when you had, and they tried to say that the Secretary of State, they tried to say, the reason that we closed 3,300 polling sites, and the largest polling site in Kentucky, which was Louisville, only had one place to vote. So the modern day version of what Oprah Winfrey portrayed in Selma of coming in to vote, we saw it reenacted in 2020 when they tried to say, well, no, there was early voting for 2 weeks. There was absentee ballot. But guess what? We know as a people that thousands and thousands of people never even received their absentee ballots. Number one, I know hundreds of people on the ground that actually never even, once they applied to get the absentee ballot, never even got it. So the same sort of trickery and games that have been played to suppress the vote of Black folks, dating back to 1944 when they had an all-white primary with Smith being all right essentially overturned in the Supreme Court. We saw that in 2020 down in Kentucky when 600,000+ people were relegated to one voting location. Mm-hmm. So let's not take our eyes off the prize. And back to your point, how we let this be known through our storytelling, through our lens, is critically important.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, this kind of gets to where I was going with the idea of story, because we're at this moment where the stories happen on our phones. So, Crystal, as you mentioned that ridiculous situation with the polling place, my most endemic memory of that is the Black mom with her daughter who's 18 years old. And she's waiting to get in. And everyone's banging on those doors. And then they're one of the first people to get in. And the mom is saying, this is ridiculous. Like, this is my daughter's 18th birthday. She's voting today. And I think that's the thing that's happening now, is that not only are these stories being told, but they're being seen. But they're not being seen in 30-second sound bites. It's significant time. Like, the reason why people were paying attention to George Floyd is that it wasn't 30 seconds. It was 8 minutes and 46 seconds. So there is something about the idea of time where you can stop for a moment and actually absorb this versus the constant scroll when you're on Twitter or any of those feeds. Because when you can take that moment and absorb it, and the people who are absorbing it don't look like us, but are finally seeing that what we've been telling you is actually true. Because I think a lot of this is that folks didn't realize that we were like, oh, you guys are exaggerating, or those were
lying.
No, it's actually true. And so as we try and get to a better place, evoking those stories where you actually can see it for real, and it's not just as capsulated in this 30-second sound clip, but it's actually expanded into story, I think gets us into a place that we can actually move those conversations forward. So Kelli, when you are thinking about the films and the programs that you're creating, how do you sort of look at it from, okay, how do I capture folks to actually want to pay attention and listen to what we're trying to say across our stories?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of what's been said today. I think for us, it's about telling a story that's going to resonate, that's going to show that this is going to change your lives. And so a recent example was a little 60-second thing we did for the BET Awards. And it really looked at, the whole notion was legislation changes lives. And so we looked at, it opened with, imagine a world free of this, free of that, free of that. And it looked at, the 13th Amendment, the Voting Rights Act, the Crown Act. So it was an attempt to tell the story of what the Crown Act would mean to people in a way that they could understand it, because the Voting Rights Act and the 13th Amendment and these other things, we built the Crown Act as part of that conversation, and then asked people help to say, we ended it by saying, help us, go to thecrownact.com and help us end hair discrimination. And so the tremendous response of that has been unbelievable. But I think the reason is because we're asking people to help us. Everybody right now wants to do something to change the world. And so giving people an easy mechanism to go do something that takes 30 seconds at a bare minimum, you can do that. Then you can go do these 10 other things to, reach your congressman or reach out to your local state legislator or whatever that may be. But I think it's grounding the messaging in a story that's easily understandable and that lends itself to a call to action that people want to do, because everybody wants to do something right now to change our circumstance. And, we as a people are so resilient and we're so amazingly creative. So showing those stories of resilience and the fact that we overcome, and we are the people, we are the essential workers, but we're overcoming the odds. I mean, those are the stories of triumph, the stories of perseverance and resilience and overcoming the odds, because that's what Black people have had to do the entire time we've been here. That's the type of storytelling we like to tell. And ultimately, we want to drive change. We want to drive action. We want to drive change. And companies that don't do that will lose. Companies that understand that and that really understand that they have to have a purpose that's bigger than themselves. It's bigger than selling a bar of soap. Right. It's not about that anymore. It's about, what are you doing to help me in my current situation? That's the type of story we like to tell.
Amen.
Yep. And, at OWN, there's not a meeting with Miss Winfrey where it's not about what's the intentionality. Everything is led with intention. And I think now more than ever, that becomes sort of where we all start. What is intention? And it can't just be about moving product off the shelf, but rather, how are you showing up for those consumers that are buying that product? Yeah. How are you making sure that they are safe and seen? So we're launching a platform this summer called Own Your Vote, and really looking to galvanize Black women to say, your vote matters now more than ever, and own it. And tips about what you need to do when you show up at the polls, making sure you have a partner, making sure that you've done
That's awesome.
many different things to really get you ready. And it comes from our CMO and team put together this amazing platform, which you're just sort of starting to bring out to the marketplace. Listening to the stats of, oh my gosh, like what Black women can do and how they can impact or turn this, you recognize that we may not always know our power, but other people do, hence the urgency to suppress the vote. So it becomes paramount that we are all talking about what that looks like and how we show up at the polls. What do we need to do to be allies to people at the polls and make sure that, everyone's voice and vote is heard.
That's wonderful.
Own the vote.
Own your vote. Own your vote.
Own your vote.
Yes, own your vote.
I love it.
That's amazing.
Awesome.
One thing that sometimes bothers me about storytelling is that I see a lot of trauma and heartache and sadness and darkness. And I oftentimes think, especially at this particular moment, we'll hear from folks, well, oh, I just sat and watched When They See Us, 13th and Selma. I feel so sorry for you, Black people. That's just terrible what's happened. And my thought is, for every difficult and necessary story that's told, we need a counterbalance in terms of telling stories of Black joy. Because if we don't, then it's still a conversation around us as a pity, as a lesson.
Yes. Agree.
Because if we don't get to the point whereby we're just regular people who have darker skin, then this also doesn't move a needle. So that's my question out to all of you is, how do we get more stories around Black joy? Like, I want to see your animated feature, Sheereen, that your boys can rock with. I just saw that Hair Love is now going to become a series on HBO Max. So that's awesome. That's step one. But how else do you think that we can get those really good stories? I mean, I want Big Bang Theory for Black people. Like there's plenty of Black nerds. I happily am one. But how do we get those stories that are really about the regular schmegular, good Black people living good lives, who can laugh, who can just live and breathe on a daily, on our screens and on our phones?
Yeah. I may be naive, but I believe we're at this inflection point. And when you see that Disney partners with Colin Kaepernick in order to create new content, when you see what is happening, you go to Netflix and you can pull up a portal of Black voices and Black conversation or Black films to, see yourselves or series. Obviously, there's platforms like OWN and BT that have been there and sharing that Black joy and creating. When you look at Queen Sugar, the texture, the beauty in it, and Greenleaf, and you see the joy and the celebration of Black families. I say to people all the time, the reason OWN performed so well in our originals is we were at a dearth of seeing ourselves told with such honor, accuracy, authenticity, respect, and intention. And when you've been starved of seeing yourself, sadly, you will compromise and watch junk because that's all that's been provided to you. So showing us fighting each other for no other reason other than to draw up ratings, or exploiting our stories for the purposes of, again, capturing eyeballs, but not about pouring in joy. And so I think part of our demands that we have to make of our partners in entertainment, as well as subscribers to HBO, as subscribers to Netflix and all of the other platforms, is demand that type of content. Show up where the content is. And if it's not there, create the urgency for it. And I think, again, when you have ideas, when you have story ideas, share them. I'm not in any way necessarily a creative, but I recognize there's a white space here right now. And I recognize that between brands and animators and young up and coming artists that want to tell stories and with great voices in a time where you can't get people on a set, when better than now to create animated series for children and normalize our lives and humanize us for the collective. So I think there's an opportunity that we really must seize it, and it can't be a moment. It must be what is curating and creating the legacy of how stories are told about all people going forward. And and the investment must be there. We need the capital so that we can tell those premium rich stories.
I could not agree more, and to just sort of expand on what you're saying. One of my series that I created called Little Ballers, which was a documentary series that I created and ended up licensing to Nickelodeon, which we certainly had a good partnership. But one of the things that came out of that, as people were watching it, they were, as reviews sort of came about, they're like, oh, Little Baller shows us that Black boys are not monolithic. And so, us in the Black community, we're like, yeah, Black people are not monolithic, right? So flashing forward, I did another Little Ballers at Nickelodeon, where I profiled a girls basketball team, and it was a 3-part documentary series. And to the question around how we deal with showing our stories with joy and showing our stories in an authentic way that are not the pity stories. And I don't mean to throw that off in a way that discredits stories that really show our trauma, because that is critical and important too. Because you do have a faction of society that is like, slavery never existed, or you have popular Black folks saying slavery was a choice, but I won't get into that right now. But in any event, I remember when I was working on my second Little Ballers installment, which profiled a girls basketball team. And one of the executives at the network, as we were going through the editing phase of Little Ballers, there was a scene with one of the girls that played on the team where, and this was a very organic, verite type of scene where they're in the bathroom. These are teammates. One girl, her hair is, straight, easy to comb, whatever texture. And another girl, her hair is a little thicker, and she's there trying to do her hair, and she's like trying to get it in the bun that she loves to have it in. And it was just this was a bonding thing with the teammates. But the young lady who was having the issue with her bun, it took her like a while to get it done. And the girl with the straight hair, she came up and she was like, "You're still working on your bun?" And she was like, "Yeah, my hair is a different texture than yours. It takes a little more time." But it was an organic, critical scene. And I remember the executive at the network, not a woman of color, not a Black woman, she was like, "Do we really need this scene about Black hair?" And I was like, I was like, first of all, I'm a Black woman. I'm a Black director. I'm a Black producer on this. There is no way in hell I am going, and I have a Black daughter with dreads, Black son with dreads, and then a younger Black son whose hair is just all over the place, but it is what it is. They were trying to get me to take the scene out that had anything to do with Black hair. And I tried to explain to them, there's no way that I am taking out this scene. I'm dealing with young Black girls aged 12 to 14. There's hair, there's identity, there's self-esteem. This is a real issue. And I think as content creators, when you're a content creator in a predominantly white space, you have to oftentimes argue to make sure that the authenticity of our stories are represented. But it was a fight. I mean, it went up. And it wasn't like, by the way, it wasn't like I'm trying to gratuitously put this in. And that wasn't even their issue. They were like, the executives were like, well, this is just irrelevant. What do we need to see about Black girls and their hair? But my point on this is it's a constant battle to show us authentically. On the original Little Ballers I had, before I took it to Nickelodeon and I took it on the film festival circuit, I won't name the company, but I had a big company that was going to pay me a whole lot more money as an independent producer to take it to their company to show this. And they were like, well, we love Little Ballers, but can you show the moms fighting a bit more about their sons? I actually had an executive at a huge company that was going to pay me 5 times the amount of money to license my property. But he was like, let me see the scenes when the Black mothers are fighting and acting out. So we also, as content creators who are independent, such as myself, are up against folks that have these stereotypical views of who we are as Black families, whether it's traumatizing us, whether it's stereotyping us, that we have to be conscientious about, that this is not who we are. So.
Right.
And Kelli, how about for you?
Well, they summed it up beautifully. I would just say, at the end of the day, it's in it serves us best when we create content that advances our culture and also our community. It's as simple as that. And we show that. I started my entertainment career at BET back in the 90s, a long time ago, and I worked with Bob Johnson back in the day. And really, his vision was to show the breadth and depth of Black people, the beauty, the breadth, the depth of Black people. That was the vision in 1980. That was the vision in the 90s when we were building the brand. And we had everything from Sita's World, which was crazy, in my opinion, to, BET News and everything in between. We actually had animation. We had all kinds of stuff. And the intentionality of that was powerful. And I think that's what we have to do, continue to do. I think OWN does that beautifully. I think BET does that beautifully. We just did the spot for BET, around the Dear Black People spot, which is all about celebrating Black love, Black joy, Black pride, Black power. And at the end of the day, that's really what it's about, celebrating us and honoring us, our richness, our tapestry, and the fact that we're not a monolith. So I think Sheereen and Crystal both said all of that beautifully. I agree with all of that.
Wonderful. I love the vibe, ladies. And so to sort of sum it all up, okay, so we're July 2020. Where do you think we're going to be a year from now when it regards to storytelling? Are you going to have like 18 different anime shorts, Sheereen?
Yes.
But I'm speaking into existence for you. But where do you all think that, from a storytelling narrative, that we're going to be a year from now?
I think we'll have like 25 new Lena Waithes. I think they'll be in their late teens, early 20s, amazing Gen Z talent that is just percolating right now, that are going to get incredible deals and be working with, some of these incredibly talented people like the Crystals of the world that have been doing it forever. But really, I think there's going to be a bubble up of incredible talent, youth, that are going to be doing beautiful, incredible content. That's what I think.
I would say, it's for all of the partners and major corporations that are right now putting forth these D&I initiatives. It's just as important to figure out what are the metrics for us for this time of year from now, because if you aren't measuring yourself and creating for that accountability, then it becomes a mission statement that doesn't really get fulfilled. And so it needs to be action oriented. It needs to be incentive based in a lot of ways for executives and partners to recognize that they're very much tethered and tied to the performance and bringing more Black people in front of the camera, behind the camera, in addition to that diversity supplier. And I'm saying this all because these are things I know we're working on in discovery, in addition to, creating equity across, all of the metrics you would have within the human resources team or people in culture team, in addition to just, I think people taking chances and giving chances and allowing for more people to be at the table and say, I have a vision or a thought. And it's crucial and it's urgent. And here's what I always say all the time when I'm talking to brands. What we often forget, and I know we're in a unique economic landscape and things have changed for a lot of families, but Black people show up with their dollar when they see themselves. And the more and more, like you think about those mothers that bought out theaters for Black Panther well before, Jack and Jill chapters, owning theaters for the weekend well before anyone else.
Hidden figures.
Yes, exactly. And it just demonstrates, again, the starvation that exists. And so I just say to anyone who's in the C-suite, this is great monetization. This is brilliant for your bottom line. Like, if that's what we're all here for, which is the green, recognize how much is there with showing up with intention in the right way for Black people, because we will be there, and it's crucial. So that's what I would say. I hope for 2020, we are all going back and checking the metrics and saying, did we measure up? Did we do what we were say that we were going to do? And also for all of the people that are coming out with partnership deals, that have they put out the content? Did they work with the right folks to make sure that Indigenous insight and that currency of accuracy about hair is there, and that they're trading on real information and allowing for multiple expressions of Black life to be seen.
Awesome. And last but not least, Crystal?
Listen, Sheereen, Kelli, ditto. I've spoken far too much, and I just would close it out by saying authenticity, intentionality, and purpose, and recognizing that if you come to us correct, then you're going to get that back multiple fold, and that the us is Black women.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's beautiful to sum it all up. Well, ladies, it has been a fantastic conversation. I feel like we could keep on chatting, and I hope in the future we'll all grab a cocktail and keep this conversation going. But a wonderful way to end the Women Crush Wednesday at Inkle Beach Live. And now I'll turn it back over to the wonderful Adrienne to tell us what's next.
Yep. You guys, I cannot thank you enough for this panel. It was really, again, inspiring. I've been inspired and using that word all day. I'm going to hashtag Black Women's Underground Railroad. I mean,
oh yeah,
I love that.
All credit to Sheereen.
You know, exactly. We need to be on it, in it. You know, I got a spot in Harlem, come through. You know, we need to put the minds together. Let's just make it happen. That's what we have to do. That there's a secret knock. I'll let you in. Come on in. But you know, I again, I cannot thank you enough. I think this is a conversation that, you know, definitely should be continued. We should workshop it out. We should do something, you know, form a really strong collective of women who can do some great storytelling to get some of the messages out there and continue to elevate the conversation, elevate the minds of our young people so that they are not returning to the same vicious cycles that we've been going through. You know, I always use this term, we need to get to that escape velocity point, you know, and I'll use it in this term where, you know, it's in science is when an object escapes from the Earth's atmosphere and it doesn't fall back to crash, right? So what if we got to the escape velocity point of this racism, this, you know, hold us back point so that we could move forward in a motion and space that we are not returning, and we can all excel and at a rate that is just unimaginable. But we can imagine because we're going to do it. So again, thank you, ladies. I look forward to connecting again. Kelli, you owe me an email. You know, let's
tonight.
Connect us all, though. I want to stay in touch with everyone.
Yes, absolutely. We should do that. So everyone, we have a DJ coming up afterwards just to kind of rock us all out. And we will be back tomorrow with some exciting guests, including Isaiah Thomas and Kevin Lyles. We'll have a conversation with Erica Pittman and Jason White. It's called This Is So Dope, so you can imagine what it is that they do, hosted by Ty Beauchamp. So we are really looking forward to tomorrow and a really special guest on Friday, but we'll let you know who that is if you join us on tomorrow. So again, everyone, thanks for enjoying Women Crush Wednesday with us at the Can Diversity Collective's Inkwell Beach Live. We will see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.